There we go. Awesome. Okay, so what am I showing you? Wrong thing. So today we are talking about object-oriented programming. So this is going to be our schedule for the day, ideally. So before lunch, I want to talk about classes, attributes of classes, class methods. I want to maybe do some of the practice assignment together. Chaining methods, I definitely want to get started on this together, just because chaining methods can be a little bit tricky. There's a trick to it that once you get the trick, it's a piece of cake. But without that trick, it's a little weird. So the afternoon, we'll do class and static methods. Then the core assignments for today are the bank account and the users with bank accounts. So let me pull up the platform. Cool. All right, so we are up to object-oriented programming. So if you are behind on the assignments, I would suggest doing the current assignments today. That way you're I would like you guys to work together as much as possible. So work on today's assignments. Then once you have today's core assignments done, then go back and complete anything that you missed. Because I want you guys to stay current, and I'd rather have you, this is the more challenging topic in my opinion. So I want you to focus on OOP rather than doing, you can get caught up once you're done with the current assignments. Okay, so let's get into it. So the overview. Today, we're going to talk about object-oriented programming, objects and classes, what the relationship is between them, how to create classes in Python, building blocks, attributes and methods. I'm sorry. So we have a question? Okay. As we go into tomorrow, so we're going to spend 2 days on OOP because OOP is kind of a beast. So we'll talk about the advanced concepts tomorrow, inheritance, the 4 pillars of OOP and all that stuff. So today we're just going to sort of ease into it. And then tomorrow we'll get more deeply into OOP, and we'll have like a little class project that we'll do together where we build a game in object-oriented programming. Okay, so getting back to my notes, there we go. So, oh, and by the way, the repo for today has been updated. So I included my notes from yesterday. So it's a little bit cleaner. Yesterday was sort of, I was getting flustered at times. So I have my notes that will be helpful if you want to use those to review. All right, so let's start with classes. So classes, what is a class? What is a class in Python? Because I know all of you did the reading.
Oh no, I don't know then.
An object?
No, take a stab at it. That's cool.
All right. My stab would be like it being kind of like what a class is in HTML. You just like target something.
Okay.
Or you tag it.
Sort of. So
Okay.
A class, basically, I think the best analogy is a class is a blueprint. How do you spell blueprint? Yeah. So I say a class is like a blueprint. Okay, so but when I say blueprint, think of like a super smart computerized blueprint, right? So the blueprint itself has properties that we can access, but think of it as either a blueprint or a factory. Okay, so if we have a factory that produces cars or tractors or whatever, right? The factory itself isn't a tractor, right? But what it produces are individual tractors. Another analogy is I live in Santa Clarita, which is sort of a suburb kind of homogenized looking community. So all the different neighborhoods have basically the same 5 houses, but they're all sort of done in slightly different styles in different places, right? So the blueprint, like for a house in my neighborhood, there would be a blueprint that can produce several different houses, right? So the house that I live in is pretty much identical to the house 2 houses over, right? They look a little different. They're different houses, but they come from the same blueprint. So the relationship between a class and an object is like the relationship between a factory, let's say a tractor factory, and an individual tractor. Okay, but the factory can keep track of things like how many tractors have been made, or it can have a reference to every single tractor that's ever been created, because it has the ability to, it's kind of a smart factory, if you will. Any questions about that so far? Okay, so if I want to make a class in Python, what is the syntax? How do I do it?
Do a
Blank.
class and then name it.
Yeah, so if I want to make a class, I just say class. And then you want to name it. The convention for naming classes is what's called Pascal case. So camel case is like the first letter is lowercase. Pascal case means you just basically join the words together and capitalize every word. So if I wanted to make a bank account, I would say class bank account, then the colon to signify that I ended my statement, and then pass, right? So that's like stubbing out a class. If I wanted to add, I mean, obviously it would be more than this, but any methods or attributes that the bank or the class has would go indented under it. Okay. So that's the basic syntax. Any questions about this so far?
Wait, what does pass do again? Sorry.
Yeah, so pass is basically if I leave out pass,
Yeah.
it's going to give me an error. It's going to say I have a statement that's, I keep forgetting the word for it, but basically like a hanging colon, right? So I want to be able to have pass just lets me say, like if I'm actually making a program that's going to be a bank account class, I could say, okay, I'm going to need a bank account class. I'm going to need a user class, right? So that pass keyword will let me stub out all the classes that I'm going to make, right? So I'm going to need a, I don't know. I can't think of any other classes. So classes are basically in our program, an object is like an object in the real world, right? So it's going to have attributes and it's going to have methods. So let me go to.
Oh, I see. So pass just like makes it its own individual.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Because otherwise,
off essentially.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
Just the same with a function. Like if I knew I'm going to need a function for add.
Yeah.
Right. But I don't want to write it right now. I could say A comma B, and then the pass just lets me put it in there, and I can still do testing and run other parts of my code without the code.
Okay. I can just use it wherever I want.
Yeah. Yeah.
Got it.
Okay. So why not just comment it out?
That's a good question. I don't know. I know this is just
Functions the same way though, right? You just like a comment, like when you comment. It's there present, so you don't have to like rewrite it or whatever, but it allows you to process the rest of the other stuff.
Yeah. And actually pass allows us to, let me show you what, let me go to a Python file. I think I'm in the wrong directory. Let's see. So if I open this in the integrated terminal, so I have this classes file. So let me make a class. And I'm just going to say class, oops, user, right? I'm going to say pass. So I have, when I use the pass keyword, like if I just comment this out, then it's gone, right? It's not, I don't have access to it. But with just saying class, user, and then pass, I can sort of investigate this object and see what it is. So if, let's say I have Joe and I want to make an instance of this class, right? So I want to create an instance of my user class. Okay, so does anybody know the syntax for that in Python?
User parenthesis,
Yeah.
open parenthesis.
Yeah, so user parentheses will give me an instance of my user class. Okay, so without putting any code in here, any of the extra methods or attributes of the class, Joe is a user. So I can print him out. I can say print Joe. And if I run this code, Python classes, I can see Joe right here.
Okay, but if you comment it out, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, if I commented it out, it would say, what are you talking about? No user, right? User isn't defined.
It'll just print Joe.
It won't even print Joe. So if I comment this out, I get a warning here. It says I'm trying to use user. It doesn't know what I'm talking about. So if I run it, oops, yeah, error, user name not defined.
Okay, I see. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so the pass gives us this ability to kind of play around, right? You never use this in production. You're never going to have something in your code that has a pass under it, right? This is just for development so we can experiment and do what we need to do. So just by virtue of Joe being a Python class, I can find out all the methods and attributes that Joe has by using the dir command, right? Or the dir function. So if I do this, run the file again, you can see that Joe has all of these methods, right? I didn't define these. These just come with any Python class. So we have the dunder, these are called dunder methods because it's a portmanteau of double underscore. So we have put a double underscore in the beginning, a double underscore at the end. So dunder is just a short way of saying double underscore. Yeah, Tim.
What's a portmanteau?
A portmanteau. Portmanteau is like a hybridization of two words. So like motel, they used to be called motor hotels.
Oh,
And then when the highway system, they started basically shortening the word to motel instead of motor hotel. So portmanteau is just like bringing two words together. And I just like saying portmanteau. So
I'm going to use it now too.
Yeah, right. So yeah, this is just we use dunder so we don't have to say double underscore. So all of these are we just get them by virtue of making a Python class. And you'll notice that one of them is dir, right? So when I call this dir here, this dir method that I'm calling, oops, is what they call syntactic sugar for this method, right? So behind the scenes, and we never call it this way, but this is the same as saying Joe dot dunder dir and invoking it. Okay, so these two lines 8 and 9 are equivalent. We're just using this dunder method that is built into Python. But we use it this way because this is syntactic sugar or a shorthand for this. Yes, Jesse.
Okay, that's cool. So it's just prettier to use the top one.
I like that. Yeah, the top one is much prettier.
Yeah, and then so all those like class delta, tr, and dict, and all this stuff in the, what do you call the double underline thing? The dunder.
Dunder.
Yeah, all those commands. So we can just plug in those right next to Joe and just see what each one does if we wanted to, I guess, right?
You could, yeah. So a lot of them will throw an error. I don't think this one will.
Unless they have like more to it.
Yeah. So the dunder stir gives you this. Right. So that just decides when you call print Joe, right? So if I ran print Joe before.
Mhm.
So if I run these two, basically the dunder stir method determines what happens when you print out the object. So this is what they call the string representation of the object itself. And all this is basically Python just automatically generates this. It shows the memory location where my object lives on my computer. Okay. Does that make sense, Jesse?
Yeah. Yeah.
Tim.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, yesterday you were talking about a difference between the dunders and the ones without the underscores on either side.
Yeah.
I don't know if that you're gonna talk to that now, but you were saying there was a difference, and don't worry about it now. But
Yeah.
what was the difference?
It's like you're reading my mind. That's where I was going next. Yeah. So the ones that don't have the dunder are the ones that we define or that are defined on built-in objects in Python. So we're going to talk about that right now. So here, I've made this Joe object, right? But as I said yesterday, and I'll sound like a broken record, everything in Python is an object. Okay, so if I say num equals 42, what is num?
An object.
It's an object, but what type is it?
It's a integer. Object.
Integer, right? So if I say print, and I use the dir method, 42, right? So it's just a number, right? It's 42. But if I look at all the methods that are available on it, these are all the methods that are available on the number 42. Right? So if I want to see them, I'm going to say, and we'll talk about what I'm doing right now. So pprint is a module we're going to use. So I'm going to say, oops, from pprint import pprint. That probably makes no sense and looks confusing, but we'll talk about that later. So if I pprint, where am I? This. It'll give us a prettier representation of all of the methods that are available. So again, we have all the same, not all the same, but most of the same dunder methods. We have some additional ones, like we have bool, we have init. Where's the dir? There's got to be a dir. There it is. So all of these come just because we have a Python class, but we also have these that don't have the dunder. Right. So these are methods that are built into Python. So when they made the integer class, they created these methods that are built in that we can call on our number. So if I want to see what, we'll use this as integer ratio one. So if I print out, yeah, so num dot as integer ratio, and run the file, it gives me the integer ratio, right? If I were to write 42 as a fraction, it gives me that. So I call this as integer ratio method on my object, on my 42 object, it'll return the ratio, right? Whatever this would be as a fraction. So this is built into Python, right? Whoever wrote, well, Guido wrote Python, he included this integer as ratio on this object, right? So 42 is an object made from the class integer. Okay, and the class integer has the method as integer ratio that we can use. Okay, does that make sense? Any questions about that? Okay, I'm kind of looking at the faces I see, looking for confusion. I don't see any. So, okay. So basically, in essence, what we're doing when we define our own classes is we're doing what the same thing as every other object in Python. We have the built-in objects, but basically what we're doing is we're making new data types and new objects that we can use in our programs. So we can, just like it's a convenience to be able to call 42 dot as integer ratio, when we make our objects, we can build methods and attributes into our objects, okay? So let's talk about attributes. So I'm gonna say, let me comment this out so I don't mess myself up. And I'm gonna redefine my class down below.
So,
So I'm gonna,
just to clarify,
yeah,
the ones without the underscores, those were because of it's a class of an integer
yes,
that those are available, and the ones with the underscores are just because it's Python, and we can use that for any like data type.
right. So, okay, so let me just clarify that we can write dunder methods as well, right? Now let me take that back. Forget I said that. So there are dunder methods on different objects in Python that make sense. Okay, so we have like for instance, GT is short for greater than. Okay, so it may not make sense to have a GT method on a string or on a non-numerical object. So some built-in classes have the dunder methods that don't necessarily apply to others. Okay, so but just by virtue, so let me make my class again. Let me say class user pass, right? We'll make Joe again. So when I do print dir Joe and I run this, every class will have these dunder methods, right? But you see, you're not going to see things like, what doesn't it have? Like we don't have an XOR, right? Or we don't have a RMOD, right? So these are dunder methods that are going to be on classes where it makes sense to have those dunder methods. These are the basics, right? These come with every single class we make or every single object in Python. Does that make sense? That answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so let's give Joe some attributes. I'll leave it there. So the way we give attributes to our class is we are going to basically overwrite or add to the dunder init method. Okay, so this is one that we're immediately going to put into use. And that's the dunder init method is how we give attributes to our class. Okay, so if I say def dunder init, so the dunder init method will run every time I create a new instance of my class. So every time I make a new user, the dunder init method is called behind the scenes. Okay, so this you'll notice looks exactly like the functions that we've made yesterday. When a function is part of a class, it's called a method. Okay, just to add to the confusion, the term they use for a function that's part of a class is method. So as soon as we have these indented inside of the class, it becomes a method. So we call the dunder init method, and we want to give attributes to our user. So to do that, we always call the self keyword. And does anybody know, or can anybody explain or take a stab at what the self keyword is? What does self mean?
The class itself,
but not the class
Like-
itself.
the function itself, then this is a textual function.
Yeah, so every time we define a new method in our class, we say def user is going to say hello. Right, so every time I define a method that belongs to my class, I always pass in the self keyword first, even if it doesn't take any arguments. Right, so I'm always, that's basically the first, or I should say parameters. That should be the parameter that we always pass in to our methods. Okay, so self refers to the object that's created from the class. Okay, so self basically references Joe. Okay, so when I make a user from my class, Joe, the self keyword refers to Joe. Okay. Questions about that so far? Okay. Tim, you were going to say something.
So it's referring to Joe, not the class user.
Right. So the class, remember, it's like a blueprint or a factory. So the class is basically our plan for what we want our user to have.
Oh, okay, and then we can make several types of users.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so the Joe is referring to the user, and then it's gonna be like, let's grab what's in user to make like Joe a blueprint of whatever the user is.
Right. Right. So we have classes and we have objects. Right. So the class is, whoops. Class is the blueprint, or let's say class is the factory. And this is the factory. The object is what is made from the factory, right? So the class would be the factory, the tractor factory, right? The factory that makes tractors. The object would be the individual tractors that come rolling out of the factory. So user is our class. And from our user, we make individual objects that are basically produced from that class.
Gotcha.
Okay. So just like objects in the real world, objects in our program have attributes and they have methods. Okay, so the attributes are basically the nouns or the adjectives associated with an object. So with the user, what a user is just a person. So what are some attributes that a person has?
Height.
Good. Height. What else?
Weight.
Has freckles.
Okay, cool. Has freckles.
Name.
How do you spell freckles? I'm not going to say, I don't know how to spell freckles. I'm going to say that.
Injuries.
Name. Perfect. Perfect. Name. What else?
Birthday.
Birthday. I think that's good enough. So we want to give these attributes to our user object. So in order to do that, we basically, any attribute we want to define, we have to define it when we first make our object. So when we first make our object, the init method or dunder init method gets called. So we basically pass in any attributes we want to create, we pass them in as parameters to our method. So I'm just going to copy these and paste them in here. And self, I forgot the first comma. There we go. Let me take this off. So to define these attributes, we basically want to use this kind of odd looking syntax, so I'm just going to write it out. So we're going to say self.height equals height. Okay. So what we're basically doing here is we're saying for each object that we make from this class, we want to attach the height attribute to it. Okay, so we're saying self.height. We're basically defining an attribute, the height attribute for our person. And we're saying it's equal to what gets passed into this method as a parameter. Okay, so we're saying whatever gets passed in here, that's going to be the height property on our user. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing for all of the other items. So we'll say self.weight equals weight.
And when we actually call it, like we'll use Joe instead of self, and it'll pull up, it'll be like Joe.height, and then it'll pull up the height.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Self just whole is like a placeholder for everything. Okay, got it.
Exactly. Self is the reference to whatever user we're going to make from this class. So in this case, we're already planning to make Joe, but it also references Jane and Mary and whoever else, whatever other users we have. Tim, what's up?
So this is similar to constructor functions in JavaScript.
Yes, exactly right. There's a slight
Okay.
difference, but I don't want to go and get into that. Yes, you can think about this as a constructor function in JavaScript. One thing I want you to notice, just this is helpful to know, why does name look different from weight?
It's not defined.
Right. I haven't made it yet. I've defined a variable or a parameter and I haven't made use of it yet. So the difference in colors, that's just basically Visual Studio Code telling me, hey, you've defined a variable and you haven't used it. So as soon as I use it, if I say self.name equals name, then it changes color. So that's just Visual Studio Code helping me out. And self.birthday, it's too many parameters, equals birthday. Cool. So now I've got my dunder init method, which is basically going to be called every time I create a new user. So I'm going to, now when I have Joe equals user, let me comment this out. Now when I run this file, what's going to happen?
You're going to get an object filled with Joe.height
Okay.
equals height. And
Anybody else
so on
wanna-
and so forth.
Okay. Anybody else want to guess what's going to happen?
Probably get an error because you're not passing in anything into the init function.
Right. So because I've defined these parameters, I now need to pass them in when I create Joe. Right. So if I run it, just to show you what's going to happen, I get an error just about the position, 4 required positional arguments, height, weight, birthday that aren't passed in. So every time I create a user, when I define these, I've got to pass them in. So self, we just kind of skip, right? Because that's going to reference our new object. So I got to give him a height. I'm going to do it in
do it in the
inches.
parentheses, or
Yeah, so just whatever parameters we have in here, we have to pass in as arguments.
I see.
Yeah, when we create our user.
So we don't have to do like height equals.
I mean,
we
you
just do it
can
directly.
You
as,
could,
like
you
have it
could do
formatted.
like you could do a named, but you could also just do positional. As long as it's in the right order, it's going to be fine. So you just say, you could say height equals 72, but we'll just do it with the positional. So height is 72, weight is, I don't know, 220. Name is Joe. And birthday is
March 3rd.
March 3rd. Yeah, I'm gonna do it as a string. 3 I don't know. 90. Okay, so now when I run the file, I should be okay if I haven't messed anything up. Cool. So no news is good news. As long as I don't get any errors, everything worked out fine. So now if I want to take a look at Joe, I'm going to do something. I'm going to say Python -I, which stands for interactive, and then I'm going to run the file. So this will basically put me into what's called a REPL. This is the same thing as when we're in a regular terminal and we say Python. Right, we get this. Basically, REPL stands for read, evaluate, print loop. We can enter Python code here and it'll run it for us immediately. So when I do this with the interactive, it's basically taking this file and loading all the data. And so I have access to it in this terminal session.
So you can do like Joe.wait.
Yeah, so first I'm just going to say Joe, and it gives me Joe's information. I can say Joe.wait, and it gives me 220.
Now, can you print out everything for Joe? Like if you want all of it, height, weight.
Yeah,
name.
yeah. So at this point you'd have to do it individually. So I'd have to say Joe dot
Okay,
birthday.
I'm just getting ahead of myself.
Well, I mean, there is a way to do it. We'll see. Maybe I'll go into it. I don't know. I don't want to confuse you, but yeah.
No problem.
At this point, we have access to everything that's defined on Joe, right? We can get his name, right? Joe dot name is Joe. So these are all of the attributes that Joe has, right? So any questions on like attributes, how we define them, what they are?
And he's for the dunder init thing. Is that necessary, or did you need that for this line of code to work?
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
And what was the init again? Like what is
Init?
that? Yeah.
I guess it stands for initialize.
Okay. So it's just like saying it to start it or like run it.
Yeah. This is just so this method gets called every time we create a new object from our class. So if you want to define attributes on your class, this is how you do it. You just pass whatever attributes you want to define as arguments, as parameters to this method, and then we can define them in here.
Okay.
Okay.
Is
So
there,
How would you define init?
I'm sorry.
How would you define init?
How would I define init?
Yeah.
Init is just built in. I don't define this. This is just something that comes with Python. This is just the syntax that Python uses to create a instance of a class or to create a class.
So init is used, like, I'm trying to figure out, I know you said it's built in, but like, why are we using it? That's what I'm asking you.
So this is just the syntax we use to create a class in Python. So in JavaScript, it's is it constructor? So when we create a class in JavaScript, we just use that method to create the class. So this is just init is just how it's done. That's just how the syntax that's built into Python.
is there somewhere we can go that will explain to us like what all these different things do?
Yeah, you can look at the documentation. You could go to the Python docs are pretty good. Just search, let's do that. Python dunder methods.
Now, I've got another question after you're done with that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, so the init itself, it likes to give a arrow with a none. What exactly does that refer to?
Good. Okay, so that is in Python, we can add that arrow. That just tells us what the return is going to be. So when you use the autocomplete, it does that. It like adds the none onto the back.
Yeah.
So this doesn't actually do anything and it doesn't enforce anything. But if I were to try to create a class, right? If I called, I'm going to show you. This is just, it's basically a way to help us determine what is going to come from a class and what needs to be passed in. So there's another way to, like, I can say int here. Is that how you do it? I can't remember the syntax. I think it's like that. Yeah. So now when I try to create a class, like if I try to create, I say Mary equals user. See how when this comes up, it says height any weight int. So because I've defined this int up here, it'll tell me what I need to include as the weight. It'll tell me the data type that it takes in. And then at the end here, it shows me what the method's going to return. So since we don't have any explicit return statements in this method, remember a function is what it returns. So as long if I don't have an explicit return, it's going to return none.
So just whether we keep it or we erase it, it's not gonna do anything.
Doesn't do anything. It's just there to help you like keep track of what a method returns or what a method takes, which can get kind of confusing if you don't use this. So this is just a tool we use or a tool we have. Tyree, what's up?
Yeah, just to circle back real quick on the init. So a little confusing that. So if you took height, weight, name, and birthday out of init and put it into the definition or define say hello in this by the self, it wouldn't work then, you're saying, because it has to be in it for it to
Has
run.
to be a net. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So then what's the point of like having to say hello then? If it
Yeah,
has to be in it.
I'm going to get to the say hello.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So so what we're doing, remember we have attributes and we have methods, right? So attributes are like if I have my can of Monster, right? The attributes are it's purple, it holds, I don't know, whatever many ounces it is. It has contain, empty, full, half empty. These are all attributes or properties of my can of Monster, right? The methods are things that the can can do, right? So it holds liquid, right? So I can add liquid to it, or I can drain liquid out of it. So you can think of the attributes as like the nouns and the methods as the verbs. Okay. So when we want to define methods or things that our user can do, we create new methods within our class. Okay. So, but before I get into that, were there any other questions about attributes?
The init, can you have I assume you can't, but can you have multiple inits inside a class or just one?
No. Yeah. Just
got it.
Yeah. There are other programming languages where you can define multiple constructors, but Python doesn't have that.
Okay.
You only get one shot at it. Any other questions?
I just had I don't remember who asked for if there's anything to help with what all those things are. But Python, if you just type help and then parentheses, whatever it is.
That works on a Mac.
Those things are.
That works on a Mac, but I can't figure out how to get it to work on Windows. Yeah, so if you come into there we go. So if I say Python, I don't know, Python 3, I can say help str, right? And it gives me the documentation for the string method. And this will give you all the different dunder methods, and it explains what they do. I can't figure out how to get this to work on Windows. If anybody can figure it out, please let me know. But is that still here? No, it's gone. So
and I think in VS Code you can just run it.
It doesn't work. I can't get it to. Let me try it again. I haven't tried it for a while. So if I say help str, let me exit out of this. Yeah, it doesn't. I get it.
For me, I ran it in the output and just ran it with the terminal and the play. No, just instead of terminal in the output, and just ran it in VS Code.
Oh, like click the run button, and that works.
It did for me.
Are you on a Mac or on a Windows?
Mac, but I did it in Windows too before.
Okay. Yeah, I can't get it to work. If somebody can get it to work on Windows and you please tell me how you do it, because I've been researching it for days. I can't figure out how to get it.
I did it, and I just did it in the repo.
So down here, like if I
Yeah.
say help,
So in the actual repo, yeah.
I get more is not recognized.
So that's weird.
Yeah. So I'll continue to look at how to do this, but I haven't been able to find it so far. So yeah, I'll try to figure it out. Okay, so exit.
I did the I'm on Windows and I did the thing he was saying, just typing in the terminal and hitting the run thing, and it worked for me to
Really?
define it. Yeah. I just did like help parentheses str, and it like did all that stuff that had all the info that you put in the terminal.
Okay.
I think
I got
I think it's because you're using PowerShell.
really.
Yeah. So if you
I
I
use
think they hit
command prompt.
that drop down. I use Bash.
I don't know. I think you could leave PowerShell. Just try switching it from terminal to output and then clicking the play button.
Okay. Well, I don't want to take too much time. I'll play with it later, but yeah, so that's one thing you can do. You can call the help function. I love that. And I usually use Linux, so I use that all the time. I want to figure out how to do it on Windows. But yeah,
I just and it worked in the terminal
really
in VS Code. Yeah.
okay. But getting back to this, so no question, you guys get the idea of attributes. Attributes are basically the things about the object, and then so if I'm right now I'm gonna get to my say hello method, and so the things that the user can do will be methods. So if I want my user to say hello, I can just print hello, right? So now if I run this file and I run it interactively, I can say, oh, Mary's going to give me an error. Let me get rid of Mary. There we go. So now Joe dot say hello gives me hello. Okay, so that's kind of boring. So if I want Joe to say hello, I want Joe to say, hi, my name is Joe. How would I do that?
You can equate.
F string.
Right on. So I use an F string. So he's going to say hello, comma, my name is, and what do I do? Joe, just Joe?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll work, right? So let me exit this. And let me just print it so we don't have to keep going into interactive. So I'll just say, I've got Joe down here. So define down here, I'm going to say, I'm just going to call Joe dot say hello. Invoke it. And run it. And this is hello, my name is Joe. Okay, but now let's say I make a second user, because the whole point of this is to have multiple users. We want to keep track of our users, right? So I'm going to make Mary, and Mary is a user. She's, I don't know, what's the height for a woman? 68? I don't know. Maybe that's a tall woman. She weighs 120, and her name is Mary. And Mary was born on, I don't know, 4th of July. Okay, so now if I say Mary, say hello, what's Mary going to say?
That her name's Joe.
Yeah. Why am I calling it? Oh. Stop running it interactive. Yeah, so Mary says, hi, my name is, or hello, my name is Joe. So if we hard code Joe, every user, when they say hello, is going to say, hi, my name is Joe. So we want the say hello method to apply to the individual object, right? So when Mary says hello, we want Mary to say, hi, my name's Mary, right? So how do we do that?
Put user there.
Okay, so just
Do
user.
self.
Self. So remember, for interpolation or format strings in Python, we use the curly braces, then we just put our variable in here. So if I say, hello, my name is self, what is that going to do? Let's find out.
Give it a go.
So I'm going to run this and I get, hello, my name is main.user object at this hexadecimal number.
Would it be
Should
self-named?
be his name then.
Yeah. So if I say self dot name, now that should work. I get, hello, my name is Joe. Hello, my name is Mary. Okay, so whenever we want to reference the object that has yet to be created, right? Whatever we want this to be able to say, whatever property we define as name on the object we create, we want to print that out, right? So we reference the self, we reference the individual object with the self keyword. Okay. Oh, self-funding, okay. Any questions so far? So let's get into the user practice. Where am I? Oops, day one, day two. So we have our assignment, right? So user here. So the assignment is to, or we're making a user. And so let's just go through this together. You guys tell me what to do, what to write, and I'll write it. So I think probably an efficient way to do this, so you don't have to keep going back and forth. I'll show you guys a trick. Get back to my code. There we go. So I have the user practice. I have this README. I have it in a separate file. So I have the README and then I have my user stubbed out, right? What I would do is go back to the assignment and you can take all this stuff, all the steps we need to do. I'm just going to copy it and I'm going to paste it into my README. Okay, so in Markdown, this is kind of a cool trick that I use all the time. We can make checkboxes. So I can say, if I say dash, space, open square bracket, space, close square bracket, space, it gives me the ability to create a checkbox. Okay, so I can do that for each one of these, each one of the steps we have to do. Right, so that way you can sort of keep track of everything. And then the instructions, right? This is what they want us to make for the assignment. So I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to paste it into the file where I'm going to make my user. So I'm going to paste it. And then just going to basically make each of these a comment.
I know
yes.
you've been doing it, but the to do is it always just change the color. That's cool.
Yeah, so that is an extension. What is it? Better
Oh,
comments. Yeah,
okay.
that I love that one. So better comments, that'll automatically change the color, and there's other things you can do, like you could put turnip red, and yeah, that's an awesome extension.
Okay, cool.
And then do this one. Cool. So now we have all of the checks that we want to do. We have all of the assignments. You don't have to keep going back and forth. Just a little more efficient. Okay, so we'll start over. So how do first thing we need to do, we created a file, include the init and make deposit method. So I want you guys to walk me through, how do I do this?
I've already started it. So you're
Okay.
gonna make a class and then user.
Okay.
And then you're going to go ahead and you can do a pass if you want, just to write without it doing the red line. But next you're gonna do a define init.
So def.
I start
init.
typing in, yeah, I was gonna say, I start typing in and then it gives it to me automatically.
Okay.
And then you do that's already self, so you'll do self dot account balance.
Oh, okay.
Unless you want the rest of the user
Oh, we can do that.
attributes.
That's fine. So we say, so what are the parameters we need? Or I'm sorry, the attributes we need.
This one specifically is just gonna have, well, the way I did it is I just had one with the account balance.
So do you just call it balance or?
Yes.
Balance?
Well,
Okay.
count underscore balance is what they
Okay.
provide in the instructions,
Balance. Okay,
or user balance, whatever you wanna.
I'll call it account balance. Is that it?
Yeah.
Is that it?
That's, yeah, that was all I put in there.
Cool. Okay,
And then the next line, I just did self dot account balance equals 0,
oh, okay.
just to give it a,
Oh, you said it's a 0?
I did that just so that it's always a 0 until we add in like what somebody's money is.
Okay, Okay.
I know specifically Guido has $150.
okay. All right, so we've got our init. So basically every time we make a user, we're gonna have, if we give it an account balance though, it's gonna automatically set it to 0, right?
Right. But then later on, we can define what their account balance is and give them proper account balance, correct?
Okay, cool.
I
So
just did that because of multiple users.
okay. All right, so we've got our init method. What else do we need to do?
I started defining the next methods.
Okay,
So it needs to have a make withdrawal and I've got it up over here. A way for them to check the user balance and then a way to transfer money. So I made 3 different methods.
okay. Well, let's do one at a time. Let's do
Okay.
make withdrawal. And what does this take?
That one's just gonna be, it's gonna be self and amount or account balance. No, just self and amount. You can just,
Cool.
Yeah.
So
uh,
how are we going to make a withdrawal?
since you already have the self dot account balance defined, you can use that. You can do self dot account balance plus equal amount.
Cool.
And then that's where I ended.
Okay.
That's as far as I got.
So that's this to do.
Wait,
right?
why would it be plus equal? Why wouldn't it be minus equals?
Oh,
You're
that's
right.
true, huh?
You're right. This
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
thinking of the deposit.
It's withdrawal. Yeah, it's withdrawal, not.
Yep.
Yeah, good catch. So yeah, so we're to withdraw, we're taking out, right? So we're going to make another method called, do they have you make a deposit in this one?
No, they don't have a make a deposit. They just have the balance, withdrawal, and transfer.
Okay. Oh no, thank you. Who did that?
Oh wait, did I miss it?
There is a make deposit. Okay. Cool. So let's
Is it?
make that one. So def, and actually I'm going to cheat and duplicate this because they're pretty much identical, right? So we're going to withdrawal and deposit are going to basically doing the opposite of each other. So I'm going to call this make deposit.
I think on my assignment thing, it doesn't specifically say deposit. Do you still want us to do it? I can show it to you if you want.
No, it's right here. So we create a user class, including the init and make deposit. So we made the withdrawal out of order. So let's.
Right. Okay.
So I'm gonna move this up. Cool. So now
Oh, I
make
see the
deposit would
instructions.
be
Got it.
plus equal, right?
Yep.
And make withdrawal would be minus equal. Cool. And I'll move this comment up so we know what we've done.
I did above even make a deposit and make a withdrawal. I made a method for display user balance.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you.
Yeah, that's cool. So we'll kind of go step by step. So
Okay.
We want to display the user balance. So how do I make that method?
You'll start a method, you'll do DEF, and then display user balance.
Display user balance.
And then self,
And
and then it should just be able to do self.account balance.
okay, so do I return it or do I print it? What should I do?
I think you return it since it's gonna be holding the number.
So return self dot account balance. Okay, so what I've been doing, I think I've been setting a bad example, and it's kind of by accident. So you don't want to write the entire thing before you've actually done any testing. So I should have made I should have ran a test before I basically right here. After I finished my init, I should have checked it to make sure that it's working. So you don't want to, basically you're gonna run when you're making code or writing code, you're gonna run the file probably 1,000 times because you want to test every step of the way, write maybe a maximum of a function and then test it. Because if you write like 10 lines of code and then run the test, you've got 10 lines of code to go through when you're debugging.
Yeah.
So first things first, I want to basically make an example of my user. So we'll say, I don't know, say Kevin equals user, right? And then user, we got to pass something in, right? Because we've defined account balance.
You should do the 150 for Guido.
Okay, so let's do 150. So now if I run this, let me make sure I'm on the right file. User practice, open an integrated terminal. So if I say Python user.py, I don't get anything. So I want to print Kevin. So now I get Kevin. I'm going to run this in interactive so I can see what I get. So if I say Kevin balance or account balance, what am I going to get?
0.
Yeah. So probably I would, instead of setting this to 0, I would either not include it at all or set it to account balance. Okay.
Okay.
Any questions on what I've done so far? Because I know we're getting close to time. Any questions on anything? Okay.
I don't think so.
All right. So we're getting, what time did I start? It's been about an hour. So I'm going to go ahead and stop there. Yeah, Yeah, we'll talk about class associations and chaining methods. Let me talk about chaining methods real fast. So the trick to chaining methods is basically return self. Okay. So if you don't want to do it on the init, but every other method that you create, if you return self, you can then basically when you invoke the method, it's going to return the instance itself, and that allows you to chain methods onto each other. Okay, so if I call make deposit and I pass in an amount, I can then immediately call. So I would basically be able to do like Kevin dot make
You're not
deposit.
sharing your screen.
Thank you. I'll do that all the time. Share screen. So I'd be able to do Kevin.make deposit. And I get deposit 500. And then when I make my make withdrawal method, I could say immediately make withdrawal and withdraw 300. So that, as long as you're returning self from the method, it allows you to do this method chaining. Okay, so that's basically the trick to it. Questions
Okay,
on that?
so always return self.
Not always though. You don't want to return self from the dunder init, but any method that you want to be able to chain, make sure you return self from.
Even the like display user balance where you're returning self dot something. Okay, yeah, you do have that. Okay.
Yeah, because actually the display user balance, I was doing what you were saying, but I would say this one should be a print.
So I'm running into the issue where it's not returning self, it's just making it wider. Like it's not reaching that area. It's not reaching that part of the code.
Okay, let me
I'll
go ahead and
show you
stop
later.
sharing. I'm going to stop the recording.